Random thoughts. In this video, I'm going to read part of C.W. Hobley's book, Kenya from a Chartered Company to a Crown Colony. This is a book that was published in 1929. It was written by C.W. Hobley. C.W. Hobley was a colonial administrator. He became a district commissioner, provisional commissioner. He came to Kenya in 1890. He was brought by the Imperial British East Africa Company. And when the company handed over the East Africa Protectorate to the British government, he joined the civil service and he became the commissioner, and he was around for close to 30 years. And this is his third book I'm reading, actually. Now, in this part, he tells us about some guests, German guests who came to Kisumu. And he talks about these German guests, and he describes them as people who we can say mannerless based on how they behaved. And this tells you the tribalism that existed or still exists among the Europeans. We always think, or most of the time, we think it's only Africans who have these perceptions about different groups of people. The Europeans did have, or still do, have these perceptions about different groups of people. The French, the Germans, the Italians, they do have those. This comes out when he tells us about these German visitors who came to Kisumu, and at this time, C.W. Hobley had the headquarters of the Kavirondo, we can call it province, moved from Mumias to Kisumu, so they were still very new. In fact, this is not 80, this is, I think, 1900s or 1901. And this is what he writes. During our early days at Kisumu, we had a visit from the late Count von Gotzen, who was a governor of German East Africa, and a very charming guest I found him. The day after his departure, however, a steam launch arrived from Shirati, bearing two German officers who had been hoped to meet their governor. The senior was Hauptmann Bautstack, and with him was Ober Lieutenant, an engineer. So the governor of German East Africa, Tanganyika, had visited Kisumu. Then he left, and C.W. Obley says he was a good guest or a charming guest. But then there were these other two Germans who came. Maybe they were expecting to meet the governor, but they were a little bit late, so they did not meet the governor. And Hobley had to deal with them, or had to host them. Their attitude and behavior left much to be desired. They first accepted my invitation to dinner, but then unceremoniously declined, as they wished to dine with a little German trader in the settlement. But they condescended, however, to come round after dinner. So initially they said yes to his invitation to come for dinner, but then they declined, or they sent a message that they were not going to come. And they chose to go and have dinner with some German trader in town. And this seems like it made C.W. Hobley feel a certain way. I can see why, because if people say, yes, we are coming to your house for dinner, and then they don't, then before maybe a few hours to that time, they tell you that they are not coming and they have chosen to have dinner with some shopkeeper somewhere, I think it will make you feel a certain way. He continues, I arranged with Captain Lewis, RASC, who was my transport officer, to support me. The Boer War was nearing its end about this time, and their comments were hardly tactful. In fact, the insolent Bostock will bow to Lewis and say, you are Kitchener, but I am the West. We Dutchers, we are men. We are soldiers. We do not make war on women and children, referring, of course, to the concentration camp. So these guys, they did not come for dinner, but they came after. And they are having these conversations with C.W. Hobley and some other guy. And these guys seems like, as he calls it, they were not tactful, like they were not careful with what they said. And they start talking to them and telling them, you see, basically telling them that you people are not disciplined because you go to war with women and children. And of course, as he says, they were talking about the Boer War that was going on in South Africa. And the British in South Africa had put the Boers in concentration camps. It's a big historical event, of course. So it will be gathered that it was hardly a pleasant evening, About midnight, they left, having finished all my supply of beer. Next morning, I went to their camp to say goodbye and found them at breakfast drinking beer. So these guys come to C.W. Hobley's house, they drink beer, they talk, say things that they did not like. Then they leave, and then in the morning he goes to say bye to them, and he found them in the house of the shopkeeper, still having drinking more beer. He continues. The trader was obsequiously in attendance, and on one side of his face was a large abrasion. I inquired the cause of his mishap, but before I had time to reply, Bostock roared out, "Ho, ho, ho. After we left your house, we went to his shop and told him to give us some wine. He refused, so we rubbed his nose in the gravels." So apparently the shopkeeper has some injury on his face. And this C.W. Hobley is asking what happened. And they tell him, we went to his shop, we wanted more beer. He could not give us the beer. So we did force him a little. In spite of this, there he was kowtowing to these representatives of brutal military caste. They never left that day, but sat and drank themselves into a condition of sodden inebriety. Thank heaven they got away the following morning to the relief of all. So I found this part to be very interesting. It's not because of any historical significance, but him describing these guests who come to his house in Kisumu, and the interaction is very interesting. He does not like them. He clearly did not like them. This is 1900s, 1901 maybe. It is interesting also because this was before the First World War, but it seems like the British did not like the Germans, and the Germans did not like the British. I found that to be very interesting. Those are my random thoughts.